guess what? Guess who didn't turn up? The cleaner. Yeah, it's now just before 1 o'clock, and she was meant to be here around about midday. So I don't know what happened. She's not replied to my text message to her. I have no idea. Could be anything, couldn't it, really? Tant pis. Thanks, Catherine, for your recommendation of ADMR. That hadn't occurred to me. I sort of had assumed that they were more aide-soignant than all the other things that they do. So I've been on the website and I've asked for Debbie. So I've put our needs forward and wait and see, which will be nice. I have a phone number to call this evening for an English plumber. I've tried going down the French artisan route and getting nowhere, and it feels awful, but I have to do what I have to do. So I'm going to call him. He won't be able to do anything till after Christmas, but after Christmas sounds more hopeful than we're not available till next May. After Christmas we'll be fine. I mean, what's the date today? It's the 23rd, isn't it? So we're a month from Christmas. I can't believe we're a month from Christmas, but we are. Chimney sweep came, and that's all been done. They had to push their thing up the flue twice, but he said it's normal if you're burning a lot of wood, and we are, because that's all we do. And we haven't burnt wood this year much anyway. I do wonder whether we remembered to get the chimney swept last year. It might be that we didn't. The year before we did have an English guy come who sent a flail up the chimney, a little bit like they did the other day in the Chateau Diaries. So it was one of those very noisy chain things, and he sent that up, which took off all the sticky resin that sticks to the side of the flue. And then he sent a drone up so we could look at the flue and talked about the things that he said were wrong with it. But we're okay, it's fine. So that was done. I have continued to struggle to read my mum's diaries. I had to find a really comfortable position yesterday to read them in, because this is what I'm up against. You know, really faint writing in pencil, very squashed together. So I persevered, because the word I was looking for the other day was mundane. They're quite mundane, and they are to a degree. And it intrigues me in a way, because they were living through the war, and they were bombed. I've got a feeling that Luton got bombed because they were making munitions. I think she ends up working in Comma Cars, and I've got a feeling that she said that she was making munitions. So at some point. But there's a common theme running through her diaries, which I find interesting. She seems to be fed up a lot, and I know that she didn't have a very happy childhood. Her mum, my nan, was quite strict, and was a widow, widowed, and then living through the war and having to keep a family of 3. So her mother had got all that on her shoulders, and I imagine that, you know, what she did was that she pushed all that unhappiness onto her children. But the other 2 were boys, and I think boys often got let off or got away with more than girls did. So I think mum was not getting away with as much as she would have liked to have done. I think also she was the middle child, and I'm a middle child, and middle children often, you know, they don't get to be the oldest and the first one, and they don't get to be the youngest and the baby forever. The middle child sort of has to get through and adapt. And And the other thing was that she'd lost her dad, and her dad had been the one that was on her side, so she hadn't got anybody on her side. So the theme was that she was fed up a lot, unhappy, getting into trouble at home, getting into trouble at work, got the sack. She was working from the age of 14 full time, and got sacked just after her 15th birthday, and then within a few days had found another job, which back in those days, even back in the day when I was first working, you could go from one job to another. It was easy. And in fact, back when Jo was working, when she was 16, she could go from one job to another. It was quite easy back then to find another job. So yeah, she went one job to another. So another theme was there were lots of boys, um, and lots of going out with boys, but not in the way that kids do nowadays in the UK. Boys would walk you home. You'd go dancing with boys. Um, you met boys, and I mean there was, some of it was sort of, they just came back and they kissed a goodnight. She'd get into trouble by her mother for some of the boys that she brought back, and I don't know what that was about, but her mum used to get really angry about the boys. And then I remember when I was that same age, that my mother, this woman in the diaries, was doing the same with me, and her mother, when her mother was staying with us, was doing the same with boys I brought home. So there was an icon for the life of me, but they just didn't. There was this level of distrust about men and boys, and what their intentions were, I think. But instead of keeping those feelings and thoughts to themselves, they would say it to the boy or in their company. It was terribly embarrassing. Um, the other thing I noticed was that Mum was using a lot of um, Americanisms. So she was saying things like boy was I hot, oh boy this, um, and what were the other? There was quite a few running through it of, sort of Americanisms that we don't use as a norm, and they were quite normal in her diary. And of course, she'd got, when she was going out dancing and meeting people and going to the youth club or going down to a dance somewhere, she was meeting GIs. And it's difficult to know of the boys' names that she mentions, that walked her home or that she fell in love with or whatever, um, who were GIs and who weren't. I imagine that one of them, who she's called Buddy, because of Buddy is very American, was a GI, and I think that it was, the GIs were better off than English lads, had much more, had many more resources, were better dressed than, and all of that, than the English guys. And I can imagine for girls back then there was quite an attraction. So I've got one more diary to finish. Two diaries with complete. This is 1943. Half of it is empty. So I've just got a bit more to do. And Jo said to me when she gave me these, you ought to read them. You might feel sorry for her if you read them. And I keep thinking, well, I'm going to come across something quite distinct, because there isn't anything here that I don't already know, really. I mean, I don't know the minutiae of it, but I know that childhood in that household was not a happy childhood. I know that she was put upon, by her mother, and I understand why her mother did that. So I know Mum's story, and I wonder whether Jo didn't. I don't know. Well, I'm going to find out, and we're going to ask Jo, because I'm going, okay, I've read them. Now what? Tell me what it is that I'm meant to feel bad about or feel sorry for her about. I do feel sorry for her. But she was living in that time, wasn't she? She was living in that time, and life was precarious. There was the threat of bombing. People didn't have a lot of money. and she was having to do more housework than, I mean, Joe didn't have to do housework at all. I don't know whether that's what it was. But it was just a time, wasn't it, that people were living through that we haven't had to face, we haven't had to live through. And I do feel sorry for anybody that did have to live through that. What surprises me, I suppose, is when at the beginning of this, I talked about mundane, that it's mundane. You know, she'll say, in the morning went to work, in the afternoon went to work, nothing special, nothing happening, nothing of interest. And I'm thinking, to be able to live through a war where you were getting bombed every so often and still to be talking about nothing happening, went to work, and not seeming worried is fascinating, because I sort of imagine how I would be as a 15-year-old living through the war and with the potential of being bombed. I can imagine, actually. I can imagine, because what happens is you adapt. And so you do go off to work each day and you go along with your life, your daily life, as if nothing's going to happen. Because if you didn't do that, then you wouldn't go anywhere and you'd stay in your room or you'd stay under a table and hide. And she's not doing that. And she doesn't talk much about the war. She does mention it. She mentions stuff that's going on away from her, you know, when Singapore is taken, and she'll mention that there was a bomb, or, you know, that a bomb dropped in this road. It might be, as I come through here, I'm in June 43, it might be that a bomb dropped closer or that she lost someone, I don't know yet. But as far as I know, it didn't get as close as that, but it certainly they were dropping bombs on Luton. And I think, yeah, as I said, I think because there were munition factories there. So it's been fascinating. It's made my neck ache. It's like trying to read small writing and find a comfortable position. I get neck ache anyway, so it's yeah, I'll be pleased when I've read them and I can give them back to Joe and say I've done my duty. I feel a bit, what did I do? I've got bread making in the bread maker. I made butternut and carrot soup, butternut squash and carrot soup. We've had some of that for lunch. I started to feel a bit unwell just before lunch, and that is what you get, like the side effect of the COVID vaccine, and that normally comes along 24 hours later. It was a bit early today, so I'm feeling it just a bit not right, but I know it's odd because because it'll go, and it's what I was feeling was like, I'm coming down with something, but then nothing happens because you're not coming down with anything, and in a few hours' time I'll be back to my normal self. So I think that's it. Is that it? Let's have a look. Yes, I think that is it. So I hope you're having a nice day. Or somebody says that I'm awfully neurotic. I think they're going to need to explain that, or have a word with my psychotherapist. It's certainly not anything was ever said to me. It doesn't really match anything. I don't think I match anything under neurotic in the DSM-5. So yeah, they're going to need to explain that. Okay, have a good day.